Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on Play on GAA. My name is Shay Brady and I have one hell of a cast with me here. I have Aaron from GAA Fan TV and Matt Hurley, the GAA Statsman here. And we're going to give a preview of the All-Ireland Football Championship for 2022. Going province by province, then the Tailteann Cup and then the All-Ireland. We're going to start here, lads, with Connacht. And Connacht is a pretty interesting one this year. Aaron, I'll come to you first. Roscommon, of course, Division 2 champions. Mayo had a very impressive campaign in Division 1, but then obviously the final, they just didn't turn up. Galway as well looked very impressive throughout Division 2. And then Leitrim and Sligo, of course, new beginnings for them. Tony McEntee with Sligo and Andy Moran with Leitrim. Now, what's your kind of stance on Connacht this year?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, all right, because probably in previous years you would have looked at Mayo maybe as a bit ahead of Galway and Roscommon, but I think with Mayo's injuries, obviously, and maybe with some inconsistencies with them towards the end of the league, there probably is maybe a bit of a chance for Roscommon and Galway. Probably in particularly Roscommon, because you would fancy that, with all due respect, they should have enough to be either Sligo or New York. Probably will be most likely Sligo. And obviously to be going into that game against Mayo unbeaten, the only unbeaten team in the country. So you never know. Like there's a real chance, I think, that Roscommon could pull off a shock against either a Mayo or a Galway. Like they've obviously already beaten Galway twice. They've one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best attacks in the country statistically. So they'll be taking a lot of confidence going into that game. But I do think at the same time with Mayo, like they should have the likes of Paddy Durkin, Robbie Henley back. I doubt Cillian O'Connor will start against Galway, but I think, if they were to get past Galway, you could see O'Connor getting minutes against either a Leitrim or a London, then probably starting against Roscommon. So would probably still back Mayo at this moment in time, but it's going to be very close. And like Roscommon have this thing as well of kind of going under the radar sometimes in Connacht, and that's when they most likely win it. So they were only champions back in 2019 when they won it. So like they've done it before, so it wouldn't be anything new. So it's going to be close, but probably just back Mayo at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, and they have the history of it, but also as well, Matt, we were talking on your podcast there yesterday about the banana skin right at the start for Leitrim, that trip to London. Like that could be the novelty of a Connacht championship as well, very similar to 2013 when London made it to the final. Like I think we were saying how much of a potential banana skin that is for Leitrim.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Considering Keith Byrne is going to be out for the game. There's a lot of pressure on these Leitrim players. London are improving as well. Gavigan hitting the lights out, James Gallagher. And London, you were mentioning on my podcast as well, London have been waiting 2 years for revving up for this game. And yeah, they're going to go hell for leather in this game. It's going to be a helter-skelter game. And for Leitrim, there is kind of a lot of pressure on them. Like Keith Byrne's going to be out for this game. He scored 243 or 244. I'm not sure which number now. In the whole Alliance League campaign, he was the top scorer throughout the league. So that's going to be a huge loss now for Leitrim. And Michael Maher will give it 100%. James Gavigan or Liam Gavigan and all them players. So yeah, it will be a banana skin for Leitrim, no doubt about that. And even on the other side, I was actually hearing for New York, Mark Ellis, former Cork hurlers, actually on that panel. I was just hearing last night. Adrian Varley, Johnny Glynn. So I know Sligo performed pretty well, but when you look at the trip over there, a long trip over to New York, I wouldn't be surprised if New York actually gives Sligo a game there. I know New York wouldn't be really the best of quality. They've some decent enough players. But again, like London, they've been revving up for 2 or 3 years for this. So it'll be the be-all and end-all for them. So I would think New York and London have a real chance of winning the games. I think Sligo are more equipped to beat New York than Leitrim are to beat London. But it should be a very interesting weekend, definitely. But Leitrim, as you said, it could be the shock of the championship, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one to keep an eye on. And I was saying about New York that I think they'll have a real type of college team feel off them. A lot of country lads moving away from home and playing Gaelic football together. Like the vibes in that camp and the atmosphere, I can imagine it will only be a good one. So, lads, what we thinking then, Connacht? I'm probably going to go for Mayo. Aaron, you were saying that Mayo is a bit ahead of the pack. I think Mayo with a chance that Roscommon catch them, just like they did in 2019. But Mayo for me.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. I go with Mayo. I mean, I wouldn't discount Galway completely. Like when you looked how vulnerable Mayo's defense looked in that league final, and Galway, like statistically the best attack across all 4 divisions, so they could cause a lot of problems for Mayo. And I don't think Robbie Henley's going to be available for that game either. So I don't know, what's going to obviously happen there. So look, Galway could turn over Mayo. It's not inconceivable there. They do have a lot of very good players. We don't know if Shane Walsh is going to be entirely fit. Obviously a couple of younger lads coming in there. So Galway could definitely give Mayo a couple of problems, but I would probably just slightly back Mayo. But then again, I think this province is a bit like the Ulster province. I think it's going to be a very hard one to call.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Matt, are you saying Mayo as well with Galway as a potential banana skin?
You know what? I was thinking of Roscommon before I came on. I just like the look of them defensively and attacking wise. They've been absolutely brilliant. I know it's Division 2, but they've been absolutely superb. And the thing with Roscommon, I mentioned this on Aaron's podcast, so he got yours as well, and myself, obviously, that Roscommon don't depend on one player now. They used to depend on Donny Shine or Conor Cox, whoever it was. But now we have Conor Cox, Dermot Murtagh, who doesn't even start now, Kieran Murtagh, Keane McKeown, the Smith brothers, and Donny and Enda. So, geez, Roscommon have some very good talents. And I'd actually back Roscommon to win it. So I know that might be a shock there, but I think Mayo could be beatable. Yeah,
I think Mayo definitely have it in them to absolutely throw it away. And over the last few years, I've noticed that Mayo seem to almost play at the level of the team that they're playing against. I mean, you think back to 2017 when they snuck through the qualifiers. Derry took them to extra time. They barely got past Clare, and then they go and give probably the best Dublin team that I've ever seen, like the best game that we've ever had in that All-Ireland final that year. So Mayo are just unpredictable, but I do think they'll win Connacht this year. But to be honest, as you said, wouldn't be surprised if Roscommon turned them over. Mayo could be coming into that game, more battle won than Galway. You never know, they might lose a player in that game. They might lose a Ryan O'Donoghue. They might lose a Lee Keegan. And it could be made for Roscommon to turn them over. But Mayo for me. So moving on from that province, we'll go to Leinster. And Leinster, obviously now, Leinster's been locked up for the last, God knows how long, in 2010 since another team won the Leinster title. Aaron, obviously myself and yourself, Dublin fans, but is this the first time really, since I can remember, 2011 was the last time I really thought Dublin might lose a game in the Leinster Championship. That was against Kildare, and Wexford obviously in the final gave us a tough game that year. But is this the first time since then that there might be a little bit of doubt as to whether we win?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think, I think there's a lot of doubts there. All right. When you look at Dublin, obviously in the league, 11 goals conceded, 5 defeats, worst league campaign since I think the mid 1990s, 6 defeats in the last 8, probably one of the worst runs in the county's history at senior football level. So there definitely is a huge chance for some of the other counties. The only thing you would say is that although Kildare have improved and they have looked quite good, the record outside of Newbridge in general hasn't been particularly great over the last couple of years. I know they beat Westmeath in Croke Park last year, but obviously against Dublin in Croke Park, it's probably a little bit different than obviously playing Dublin and Newbridge. And then you look at some of the other Leinster counties, fair enough, Louth have shown, they're on the rise and they're looking quite good. And I think they could be fixed to play Kildare in the Leinster quarterfinals, which would be a very, very interesting game. But other than that, Laois are very much on the decline. Meath are probably still where they're at last year and probably haven't improved that much. So you probably would look at it and think if Dublin were in a different province, they could be in big trouble. But they probably should still have enough to win this. But I think it's a massive chance for Kildare. I think if you're the Kildare players, Kildare fans, Kildare management, you're going into the Leinster Championship feeling that you've got a real chance. And if they can keep Daniel Flynn fit, Jimmy Hyland, Dara Kirwan, these lads, they have a serious chance. And, it's kind of interesting because one of my mates even said to me the other day, Kildare's full forward line is arguably better than Dublin's full forward line at the minute. Obviously, without Con O'Callaghan, if he comes back in, I think Dublin definitely have a better full forward line then. But when you look at Dublin's full forward line throughout the league, so, and then you've obviously got either Kirwan or Flynn or something like that coming off the bench. So they've got a serious chance. And, I think Dublin probably get their act together a little bit next year. So I think Kildare probably have a huge chance this year. And I suppose we'll have to see if they can take it.
Yeah, and this is definitely the best chance I've seen them have for years. But the only thing that is in my head, Matt, and I'll come to you for this, is how comfortably Dublin beat Kildare in the Leinster final last season and how it was really just Daniel Flynn against Dublin up in the forwards. And while, yes, Kildare have made strides, I can't see them closing that gap in 1 year. Like I just can't.
Yeah, like it is hard, but you have to remember that point as well. It was Jack O'Connor really putting defensive tactics into it. I think it was maybe to put a light in it, saying, "I did a good job. I came close to Dublin and all that." But look, they didn't attack really. And what I noticed about this Kildare team in the league, they're very good at attacking. Not so much the goal scoring. Like they've only scored 2 goals in the league, both from Jimmy Hyland. So that's not really impressive. But at the same time, Johnny Doyle's come in, Dermot Early, Anthony Rainbow. So I think there's guys there on the backroom team that would actually give it their all to try and beat Dublin. I'm not sure did Jack O'Connor have that same drive last year. That was the problem with me there. But yeah, I think Kildare looked better than they did last year in the league. They kind of went up last year, kind of luckily when you think about it. Like, you know, Cork were off form, Clare, like they lost to Clare, let's not forget Newbridge. So like they didn't do particularly well last year, but they did very well in Division 1 despite going down. So I think Kildare a chance. But as Aaron rightly said there, if Dublin were probably in another province, they'd be in massive trouble there. But they're in Leinster. I think Kildare are the only challengers. Meath aren't great. Louth are probably the next best after that. And like there's arguments they have focused on one player. Offaly are still inexperienced, as seen in the Cork game in the last few minutes. So I just think Kildare are the only challengers to Dublin. They have a very good attack. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me if Dublin got beaten. But I just think Kildare are just a small bit off at the end. Maybe next year they could go on and win it. But the drive will definitely be there. They haven't won a Leinster Championship now 21 years. So maybe this year is the year for them.
Yeah, no doubt. Like the drive will be there. They'll want to win it so badly. But I can't see Dublin losing in Leinster this year. But I can see them losing in the All-Ireland stages. So I think we're all saying Dublin for that, are we?
Yeah, definitely. What I would say though as well is even with counties like Offaly and some other counties, if they have a go at Dublin, if they actually like, right, because I think we've seen in the past when Dublin have played like Westmeath and Leashes and these kind of teams, like they'll just sit back and play a full blanket defense and just try and like damage limitation. Whereas now, even like that, looking at that, if Offaly get past Wexford in Tullamore, like although you'd expect Dublin to still win it comfortably enough, you look at it and think if Offaly have a go at Dublin, like they will get chances and they probably will get goals and it will be a closer game. So hopefully you actually see counties having a go rather than just sitting back and damage limitation, a bit like what we were saying with Kildare last year.
Yeah, I hated watching games like that where it was clear that they were just happy to lose by 10 points. It was, you know, you knew the result before the game started. But anyway, so Dublin is our pick to win the Leinster Championship. Moving from there now to Munster. And again, this one is a bit, you know, cut and dry. Like Kerry, obviously no one's really coming close to them in my opinion. Like Matt, I'll come to you first for this. Every county in Munster really, none are on Kerry's level right now.
No, not at all. I think Cork probably have the potential to do so, but we just don't. But before we start the Munster preview, I want to send my best wishes to Keith Ricken. Obviously, he's you know, taking a year out for personal reasons. Apparently, I wish Keith all the best. Like life is more important than sport, and this week has shown us more than anything. But I suppose I don't think we'll beat Kerry even. But there will be a drive in the dressing room to say, lads, we're doing it for Keith here. Like, go on and try and beat Kerry, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Kerry are going to walk through. But I'm more interested about the other side, actually, because you have 3 sides that potentially could reach the Munster final, and that could be good for their development. In Clare, Limerick, and Tip, I'm discarding Waterford, obviously, because, honestly, they're not a footballing county whatsoever. But Tip, even Division 4, I'd actually fancy them getting to a Munster final. Like, they're facing Waterford the first day out. That'll be an easy day out for them. Clare Limerick, that's a game that I really want to be shown live, to be honest with you. That looks a mouth-watering game indeed. Like Clare have been Division 2 over the last few years, but I wouldn't be surprised if Limerick pulled them over. Like they had a bit of a bad day against Louth, particularly in the second half, but I still think they have the potential to reach the Munster final. Like, but let's be honest, whoever reaches the Munster final are still going to get tanking off Kerry. Kerry are just at a different level. They're probably just focused on All-Irelands now. Their defence is much improved. Their attack is superb. Their midfield is brilliant. They're not reliant as David Moore as they have been in the past. But there was a worry about the goalkeeper going into the league final, but then Shane Ryan put up an outstanding performance against Mayo. So that issue was quenched pretty quickly. So I think Kerry, they're focused on other things now. They're way ahead of the pack in Munster. But I think the other side of the draw will be interesting to see who gets to the Munster final. Like Limerick haven't reached one since 2010. Clare haven't reached one since 2012. So it'll be big for them two counties, especially to try and reach a Munster final.
Yeah, I agree, because like it just does stuff for the county. It brings more eyes to the team and then more development for the future. But you're absolutely right. The game between Clare and Limerick is really, really interesting, because Clare have been in Division 2 now for a long time. And they seem to have they seem to be at the same level that they were 5 years ago. Like they seem to be just as good as they were 5 years ago, which obviously I was saying in multiple podcasts, I was saying I'm really impressed by, because the players that they've lost in that time, Aaron Fitzgerald, Gary Brennan, like they've lost these lads and yet they've maintained their level. So I'm very impressed with that. But at the same time, Limerick are just coming with all this momentum, 2 promotions in 3 seasons under Billy Lee. So you can't ignore that anymore. And then obviously coming into this game, be very impressive if they manage to turn over Clare, because Clare are a side that can mix it. I mean, you think about the Mayo game last year, they took Mayo right down to the wire. Obviously, you mentioned they beat Kildare and Newbridge. Like they are a team to be taken seriously, and it would be a serious scalp for Limerick to take. Aaron, obviously, I'm assuming that you're picking Kerry to win Munster, but then who do you think will be in the final there with them?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely would back Kerry. That goes without question. Yeah, on the other side of the draw, it is interesting. All right, like I definitely wouldn't rule out Tipperary either. Like, I mean, I know they drew at Waterford earlier on in the league, but clearly a different team since then, and have probably unearthed a few more players like Mikey O'Shea and Sean O'Connor who've come in there. So looking at Tipperary, I think they've got a chance. Like I reckon they will get past Waterford, but you would look at Clare as, like, when you look at the body of work that they've done over the last 4 or 5 years, like sport obviously doesn't always work this way, but you kind of feel like they nearly deserve to get that day out in a Munster final for all the work they've done, and the fact that they've gotten so many tough draws. Like they've gotten Kerry, I don't know how many times in the early rounds of the Munster Championship. So, I mean, but you seen 2 years ago, like they played Tipperary in the opening round, and then the winner of that ended up playing Limerick. And obviously Tipperary went on to reach the final. They didn't quite take advantage of it then. But as you were saying there, like with players like Owen Cleary, David Tubridy, like lads that probably aren't getting any younger really. So it's a huge opportunity for Clare, and there's no real pressure on Clare, I don't think, to get to a Munster final. But I know a lot of the players and management will probably be thinking, like, realistically, we're probably not going to get this chance too often again to go and reach, a Munster final. And like Limerick definitely are on the up. Maybe in a couple of years they might overtake Clare with some of the younger players there coming through. So it's a huge, huge chance. But I'd back Clare to get to the final. All right. And then look, you never know. Like in the qualifiers, they might get a handy draw and maybe might get to an All-Ireland quarter final, which would be a big story. But yeah, you just can't look past Kerry. Like they're probably going to win this with one eye closed, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with everything that you've said there. So Kerry it is to win the Munster Championship. That's our prediction. And then moving up to Ulster, the toughest province to call, no doubt. I mean, you're thinking there, Tyrone, the All-Ireland champions, Donegal, probably the most inconsistent team in the country. Monaghan as well, obviously staying up in Division 1 again. Armagh, they're on a serious wave of momentum. Obviously, Rian O'Neill cleared of his suspension. Like, Aaron, I'll come to you first. Obviously, over the last years, it's no doubt the most competitive province. And the 4 teams that I mentioned there, I believe the winner is going to come from there. And Derry, I think Derry are serious contenders. But which one do you kind of have your eye on?
Yeah, it's such a hard one really to call. Like a couple of weeks ago, or even more than that, I definitely wouldn't have looked at Donegal as a side that could win Ulster. But I just have a sneaky feeling that they are going to do it, because I know Rian O'Neill is obviously back in contention now for Armagh, but their record in Ballybuffet isn't particularly great. Their record against Donegal in general isn't brilliant. There's a lot of pressure on the Armagh team to deliver. Donegal are probably going under the radar when they've have a history under Declan Bonner of winning Ulster Championships. Michael Murphy's back fit now as well. And they've a much handier route really to the final than the likes of Tyrone, Monaghan, Derry. They obviously played a winner of Cavan and Antrim in the semi-finals, which they should win. So, and I think once Donegal get to the final, I think they should have enough to deliver and turn up. They are they're a weird team as well. Their style of play is sometimes questionable, and you don't really know what you're going to get with them. Like they could beat Armagh and lose to Cavan in the semi-finals. Like they're such a strange team at times. But I probably would back them at this moment in time, which might be a surprise. I have a funny feeling Tyrone are going to get caught maybe in an Ulster semi-final or maybe in the final. and then regroup and come back through the qualifiers like they usually do. Like they've got a couple of injuries there, like Matty Donnelly and Peter Hart, and some questions over Conor McKenna if he's going to be in the panel this year or not. So I'm not sure. Like I just don't really fancy Tyrone to come through Ulster. I'd probably look at Donegal at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting take on it, and I get 100% where you're coming from, because there's such questions about Tyrone's camp. Like, why are all these players leaving? What's the story with Conor McKenna? Like, is there something up there? And then obviously you got the other teams coming strong. Donegal seems to be a happy camp regardless of their inconsistent form. But Matt, like, would you kind of agree with that? Would you be looking at Donegal more now, or would you be still looking at Tyrone?
You see, I still have my issues with Donegal. I could see where Aaron's coming from. Like, Tyrone still have issues behind the scenes and all that. And Armagh have players suspended. Of course, Reno Neal's back in there now, so that's a big boost to him. But they still have the likes of Stephen Campbell and Nugent out. But I still have my reservations about Donegal. I just think they're a bit inconsistent. Like, they don't know their style of play, for one thing. Like, other than Michael Murphy or Paddy McBrearty, they only really have Conor O'Donnell in the scoring sense. Ryan McHugh's decent, I guess, but that's about it for Donegal. I just don't rate them, really. I don't think they haven't got to a semi-final since 2014. Like, that's a big margin there. Like, it's going to be hard to back Donegal. I definitely can see where you're coming from Tyrone. Derry aren't ready quite yet, in my opinion. I think they're a good side in the right direction, but I don't think they're there quite yet, as shown in the Galway game in the league. I think Monaghan, I have a sneaky suspicion for them. They're coming into form now after the Division 1 game against Dublin towards the end of the league. So, like, I look at the other teams around in the semi-finals, they'd probably beat Donegal against, like, Cavan or Antrim. That'll be a tough game, to say the least. Like, one of them could even reach the Ulster final. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens there. Yeah, but I'd actually back Monaghan to win Ulster. I think, like, they're coming into form at the right time. They do have the players other than Conor McManus, the likes of Andrew Woods, the likes of Aaron Mulligan, Darren Hughes still going strong a bit. Jack McCarthy, of course, hit the lights out against Dublin. Sean Jones there as well. Rory Beggan, of course, in goal. Excellent goalkeeper. Ronan Boyle in full back. So I'd actually fancy Monaghan to win Ulster. I know that might be a shock, but seeing as Tyrone, there's problems behind the camp. I don't trust Donegal particularly. And Armagh have a few players out. Derry aren't quite ready yet. So I'd actually back Monaghan to win Ulster. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, we're all disagreeing with each other now, because I still think Tyrone just have too much quality. I think if they bring back McShane and he's backfiring, I can just see Tyrone going on a bit of a run and trying to really consolidate their position as Ulster Kings, because like the 2000s teams under Mickey Hart, they built their base from Ulster, winning all those Ulster championships and then building that as a platform to go on and win the All-Ireland. I know in 2008 they got knocked out in Ulster and came back through the qualifiers to win, but they were the Kings of Ulster, the undisputed Kings of Ulster, and that's where their base came from. So I'm going for Tyrone, Aaron's going for Donegal, and Matt's going for Monaghan. We'll see. Probably be all wrong. Armagh will probably go and win it or something. But moving on from there to the Tailteann Cup, obviously now, the latest addition to the All-Ireland Championships. Definitely something like this was needed. Obviously, we were saying way back when on your podcast, Matt, myself and Luke, we were saying we don't understand why there isn't just a senior, intermediate and junior championships, just like the ladies' games. But like, what's your take on this, the Tailteann Cup? And then who do you think is your pick anyway? Just a pick of who you think is going to win it.
It's a very tough competition. I hope it gets the recognition it deserves. I was hearing on RT, it's going to show the semi-finals and the final, which is very disappointing, because I'm actually more interested in this competition more so than the Sam Maguire, because let's be honest, I think Kerry are going to walk the Sam Maguire Cup this year. Like, it's going to be harder for them not to win it this year. So I think the Tailteann Cup is going to be very interesting. Like, I look at a few teams: Offaly, Cavan, Antrim, maybe Sligo. I think they have good players coming through, like Niall Murphy, Sean Carabine, and there might be an onus there to do it for the late Red Oak Murphy, and condolences to his family. But there might be an onus in the Sligo dressing room to do it for him. Like, like that could get you a long way there. The more I think about it, I'm going to go for a shock. I think Sligo could actually win it. I think they have a very good team. They have a very good manager. They have the onus to do it for Red Oak. And geez, Sligo football's on the up. Their under-20s beat Roscommon the other night. I just think Sligo for the Tailteann Cup. I think Offaly will be pretty close as well. But I think Sligo, they have very good players all over the pitch. They have the onus. They have the youth coming through. I think Sligo could win it. Tony McAtee could do it for them. I don't know, but
yeah,
it could happen.
Definitely. Like, I mean, I agree with everything that you said there. They have the players. Like, Niall Murphy's one of the best forwards that you're going to get. Sean Carabine's fantastic. Patrick O'Connor, Pat Spillane, like, they have the talent. So it'll be interesting to see. They're my dark horses. I'd more be looking at kind of an Offaly or just a team like that. I just feel like potentially they could do it. Offaly, you know, they have the talent, and what a boost it would be. Cavan as well. Cavan tend to get better when the championship comes around. I'd be looking at them as serious contenders. They're very similar to what I said about Mayo. They tend to play at the level of the team that they're playing against. I mean, because they were in Division 4 and they didn't put a beating on anyone. They just kind of tiptoed through. Whereas then in the Ulster Championship 2020, like they beat Donegal in the Ulster final. So they're a weird one. But I think they'll turn up in this. And Cavan actually would be my pick to win. And then obviously Sam Maguire. And right, so moving on to this. We've all said Kerry. But who do you think then will be the most likely to dethrone them? Presuming that you said Kerry. Aaron, I'll come to you for this first. Who do you think is most likely to really put Kerry to the test?
Probably Tyrone, to be perfectly honest. I feel like Tyrone, their style of play, like they have a number on Kerry over the last, well, obviously they beat them in the league this year. They beat them in the championship last year as well. Like, I just think Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan, like the way they sort of suffocate the space, like in front of their goal, like you've seen obviously with Mayo, like the way they go man to man with Kerry probably isn't the right way of going about it. Like you've seen with Tyrone, like playing a sweeper in there as well. Just really like not allowing too much space for the likes of David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, these lads, and then obviously hitting them on the break, on the counter attack as well. So I think Tyrone, to be honest, and I actually think like Tyrone playing Kerry, like say if Tyrone were to go through the qualifiers, or even if they were to come through Ulster, potentially playing them in like a semi-final or a quarter-final would actually really suit Tyrone, like because they'd be going under the radar. And I think Tyrone could give Kerry a really good number. I wouldn't rule out Mayo either. The only thing is, I think Mayo and Kerry might be fixed for an All-Ireland final if certain things went a certain way. And you would look at it and think in an All-Ireland final, you'd probably expect Kerry to stand up and win that one, especially with Mayo's recent record in finals. I'm not sure. Like, I think, weirdly enough, even though I don't expect Dublin to do anything of significance this year, if Dublin were to play Kerry in an All-Ireland semi-final, with all the pressure being on Kerry, I could see Dublin turning up for that game and maybe like giving an extra 5 to 10% than they have in previous years, and sort of that siege mentality, backs against the wall kind of type thing. And Dublin could probably cause a few problems for Kerry, although defensively we have been all over the place, so I couldn't see us doing anything there. So the closest one I think to Kerry might be Tyrone, I think, this year.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with what you've said there. And then Matt, obviously coming to you for the next bit. Obviously, Matt, Aaron's has gone with Tyrone as the most likely challengers to Kerry. But yourself, what are you thinking? Are you thinking Mayo or Tyrone or Dublin, or maybe a dark horse potentially?
The thing is, I don't trust Mayo at the site, so I think I agree with Aaron. Tyrone would probably be the closest. Like Kerry tend to struggle against Ulster teams, so I think Tyrone will probably be the closest to Kerry, as shown by last year. They shot Kerry out of the system. So, and the thing with Kerry, they're not going to get tested in Munster, so it's as good a time as any for Tyrone to beat Kerry. So I would agree with Aaron there. I'd say Tyrone would probably be the closest to Kerry.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can't forget last year's All-Ireland semi-final. They really caught Kerry on the hop, and like they just walked through them that day. The key for me, the absolute key, is whether or not Jason Foley and Tadhg Morley continue their form, because last year in that semi-final, Tyrone just sliced through the middle of the Kerry defence at will whenever they wanted to. So they're the keys. And if Kerry can lock up that defence, as they had done in the league, I mean, Jason Foley was fantastic. He was in all of our teams of the league. Like, he was brilliant. Tadhg Morley as well was superb. If they keep it up, they're the keys for Kerry winning the All-Ireland. And then obviously David Clifford and Sean O'Shea, like, they do the rest up front. They've been supreme. Clifford in that league final looked superhuman. So, like, that's the level Kerry are at. If they tighten up at the back, they'll be All-Ireland champions. And I think that's all our predictions. So, guys, that is the predictions for the 2022 All-Ireland Football Championship here on Play on GAA. Thanks to Aaron and Matt for coming on today.
Thanks very much, Seamus.
Yeah, cheers, Shay, for having me on.
No worries, lads. All right. So, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Until the next one, guys, take care.